conversation. It's let's just be real. Ole Miss was 5 of 13 from the free throw line.
Oh, and I'm using the coach's words here. I had one person get upset with a phrase I used on Twitter last night. I called the loss pathetic, and somebody didn't like that terminology. Your own coach called it embarrassing. So if you want spin, he's not spinning it. Why are you? It was pathetic. Getting beat like that by a team like that on your home floor is embarrassing. It's pathetic. That's what that was. And sometimes in basketball, and I know they're banged up too. Injuries have not helped that team, but still this young nucleus that everybody's talking about, plus your veteran center and a couple of guys that have been in the program for a long time, all played last night. Injuries aren't an excuse for that performance. But sometimes in basketball, you just get beat. You run into a team that's hot shooting and you just lose. I mean, Duke loses to bad programs sometimes. And look at the players Duke has. It does happen in basketball. But what you've got to look at is that performance in a conference game at home against that team in the same season where Samford came into your place and beat you at home, where you got just embarrassed and run out of the gym by Western Kentucky, and you got a loss to Boise State on the schedule. It's not just one game. If it was just one game, we'd pass it off as, hey, bad night. That's basketball. Just happens sometimes in basketball. Bad night. This isn't a bad night. This is something that needs to, needs to be addressed or whatever. That's probably not the best term, but this is not a new thing for this team this season. Offensively, they've been stagnant in a lot of games. Effort has been questionable in multiple games. And they've gotten blown out on their home floor by bad teams. They've gotten blown out in general by bad teams this season multiple times. This isn't a one-off. This is kind of who they are.
Ole Miss was down 21-19 when Sammy Hunter had a dunk with 8:21 to go in the first half. 2-point game with 8:21 left in the first half. And then Missouri closed the half on a 17-4 run to take a 15-point lead into the locker room. Is that right? 17-4 run. It was 38-23 at halftime. And it really never got close in the second half. I mean, Ole Miss cut it to 13. They got it back to 14 a couple of times, but just never could sustain anything. They couldn't get stops on the defensive end. They couldn't make shots consistently enough to get anything done. Rebels got it as close as 10. They cut the deficit to 10 with 7:46 to play at 57-47. And then it went the other way, and they end up losing by 25. So in the last 8 minutes of the first half, Ole Miss was outscored by 13. And in the last 7 minutes of the second half, they were outscored by 15. That is not good. In terms of scoring for Ole Miss last night, here was, let's see, how did it break down? It was Deshaun Ruffin with 12 in 27 minutes. He was the only player in double figures. Nasir Brooks had 8 points and 10 rebounds. 6 for Morrell on 2 of 10 shooting. 6 for Luis Rodriguez, who can't buy a basket, on 2 of 11. He had 9 points for Ty Fagan off the bench. He's played relatively well. And Ole Miss played some guys last night they hadn't played. Grant Slatton played in the game.
Yeah, it was out of anger, it appeared.
James White played. Eric Vanderheiden played. The guys hadn't played all year. So,
yeah, it was like a hockey shift, is what that was. Essentially, out of frustration, but that's the thing is, and focusing on the macro in this game, I think is a mistake. Not that we're spending too much time on it anyway, but you have the inevitable question: is Kermit Davis on the hot seat? I mean, I can't tell you the number of people, Richard, people that I haven't heard from in years texted me, are we going to fire the coach? Was a message I got from a guy I haven't talked to in years last night. And my response was, well, no, not right now. I mean, you're all out a dozen losses in a row and maybe things change. But I think it's fair to say that the program itself is at a point of contention. Because you saw the crowd last night. That's only going to get worse. People are not going to go, especially when baseball season comes and you got a top 5 team with a great offense. All joking aside, or not joking about Mike Bianco and fans wanting him out and him interviewing for the LSU job, they just broke a record in season ticket sales. So,
and they win like crazy.
And you know when you see them play, they've got a chance to win every time, especially with the offense they have returning. And that's coming soon. So crowds are going to be dead. The team is going to continue to lose games. I think that's where the conversation needs to go here with this, in this program, is what do they do now? Because apathy is about to set in, and like we said yesterday, you cannot ignore empty seats, and there's about to be a lot of them, and there was a lot of them last night.
And Borky, I would say this, and this is not a slight at all, because I know there are tons of passionate fans that do this, but message board communities and social media are not 100% reality. If you're going to those places and those places only to take the temperature of a fan base, it's going to look like a red-hot fan base when things are going well, and it's going to look like the worst fan base ever when things are not going well. But this is a conversation that extends beyond message board communities and Twitter fire-away people. There are people that are frustrated. There are people that are disappointed. I don't think, though, everybody is abandoning Ole Miss basketball. But I do think that there are serious questions that you have to ask, right? I mean, and this is kind of what you're talking about. Ole Miss has made, in the last decade, a more serious and significant investment into basketball than it has ever made at any point in the history of the program. With its practice facility and with the $95 million just crown jewel of a basketball arena right in the middle of practice. In the middle of campus. Recruiting budget is bigger than it's ever been. Travel budgets are bigger than they've ever been. Coach and assistant coach compensation is bigger than it's ever been. And some of that is it's bigger everywhere. I understand that. But Ole Miss has made a commitment to trying to level the playing field in basketball. And so when you start looking at return on investment, that's why difficult questions have to be asked. If you've got a coach that's not winning and you've clearly shown institutionally that you don't give a crap about a program, then whatever.
Missouri baseball.
Sure. Why would you ever fire a Missouri baseball coach, regardless of the record? Just
and so they're not really terrible something? Either.
Yeah. They just don't care.
Yeah.
They just don't. They might say they care. There might be a small pocket of people that care. They don't actually. But when you make a significant commitment to a program, you're saying institutionally you care. And frankly, the SEC decided as a league that it cared about basketball and it cared about basketball big. And so you got to figure out a way to right the ship. And we talked about it yesterday. The opportunity for Kermit Davis to turn this thing around is probably going to be dependent on who he can bring in terms of transfers to reshape next year's roster and win next year and win at a get you to the tournament level next year. That's just kind of as plain as you can be. If it's going to turn around, that's going to be the way that it has to ask questions. But Kermit Davis deserves another year. He needs to take a page out of State's book with transfers. He had so much success so quickly at Ole Miss, might have made expectations higher faster. Yeah, there's something to that. But part of the reason he had the success that he had out of the gate was because he inherited a team that had Terrence Davis and Breon Tyree and Devontae Shuler on it. Now, he got a bunch out of those guys. And look, if you're going back down the road of Ole Miss never should have gotten rid of Andy Kennedy, shouldn't have made a change there, That is 100% revisionist history.
No doubt.
And I'm a huge Andy Kennedy fan. Friend. Like him, have worked with him, have been friends with him for a really long time. Occasionally still text with him. But it was time for a change. Andy Kennedy lost that team. He lost that locker room. He admitted it. He knew it. Andy's in a great place. They're winning a bunch of games at UAB. He may have a tournament team there. It's a place that he played college basketball. That had to happen. But he had some talent on that roster. Kermit Davis did a great job with that roster in year one. And then it was a roster that was minus Terrence Davis the next year. And then it was minus Breon Tyree after that, and now it's minus Devontae Shuler as well. There are 3 really good, talented pieces on this team. And I'm not, 4, but I'm thinking in terms of the ability to be good long-term. Right? Nyseer Brooks is a 1-year deal. He was at Cincinnati, and then he was at Miami, and now he's at Ole Miss. He's out after this year. It's like 39 years old. But Brakefield and Morrell, and then the freshman,
Ruffin.
Deshaun Ruffin, it's a good nucleus. You got to build around that, though.
And immediately.
And immediately with impact transfer players.
And that's at least what the portal gives you. It's kind of a double-edged sword, right? Because an optimist would say, and I agree with the texter, I don't think a change now is beneficial, truthfully. I don't think it'll happen. I could be wrong. Keith Carter surprised us before. Matt Luke was on the recruiting trail when he got canned. Keith Carter speaks softly and carries a big stick, as they used to say in politics. He has shown that. I have the unrealistic expectations thing. I actually don't think that's fair. Fans aren't bothered in checking out because the team's not a tournament team this year. They're bothered in checking out because they're losing to teams they should not be losing to, and the product, quite frankly, is not entertaining. It's not just that they're losing games. It's hard to watch. Their losses, when, one, you're not competitive against Missouri, and offensively, it's brutal. So they're not winning, and they're not entertaining, and they're not close. That's more of the issue. If they were a team that was, kind of bubbly and competitive and a little fun, ran an offense that was fast and they got out and ran a lot, and that would be different. But that's not what this team is. They struggle to score. You can argue that an injury especially has hampered that, but still, they can't score. Effort appears to be inconsistent. I don't like when people say...
Well, and when you... and I'm not excusing the effort thing, but when you lose a guy like Joyner and a guy like Robert Allen...
It hurts.
They're probably... And I'm not even talking about production. I'm talking about, leadership. Kind of the veteran guys that drive that this is how we're going to play, this is how we're going to practice, this is how we're going to perform. That's hard to replace.
It hurts, no doubt. But the expectations, I think, are fair around here. I think they're fair. People don't expect a tournament team every year. That would be completely and totally unrealistic. And the league has elevated, and you do have, say, Kentucky in your conference. Kermit Davis could be the best recruiter in the history of basketball. Same for Ben Howland. And they will not get the players Kentucky can get. There are things that happen in college basketball that are out of the control of the head coaches at Ole Miss and Mississippi State. You're not getting the Kentucky guys. Have you heard how Will Wade gets players? He told you himself. It's not really happening around here very much. They're not asking you to get a bunch of 5-stars and win games like Kentucky and be better than Kentucky. But they are asking to have an entertaining product on the floor. And while it's difficult, it's a hard job, really hard job. It's a better job than Boise State and Samford and Western Kentucky and Missouri, at least with what Missouri has recently put on the floor. That's why people are frustrated. It's not that they're not making the tournament every year. It's that right now, the trajectory is going the opposite direction and not matching what people are putting into the program right now. That has to change and fast.
Yeah.